I was up against the tiled wall, pants tugged halfway down, his mouth on me like he'd memorized every inch. My body trembled as I hit that first climax, then a second, and before I could catch my breath, he was inside me, deep, strong, focused. It felt sinful, but it also felt like justice for every year Frank had left me untouched and starving. By the time we collapsed, I'd come 4 times. I don't remember washing the bathroom after that. We didn't try to stop it after that. We just got better at hiding it. Hi, LC community. You're welcome to my world. And here, right now, I'm about to tell you one big secret I have vowed to take with me to my grave. If there's one truth I've learned in 52 years of life, it's this. Loneliness doesn't care how many people live in your house. It'll still sit right next to you at the dinner table. My name is Denise. I live in Austin, Texas. I married Frank 10 years ago after a bitter divorce from my first husband. Frank was quiet, dependable, emotionally steady, a complete opposite of my ex, who was unpredictable, wild, and left me scarred. At first, I thought Frank was the calm I needed. We were both older, both had our baggage. We agreed, no drama, just peace. But peace doesn't keep a woman warm at night. Frank and I hadn't had sex in almost 5 months, and when we did, it felt more like a chore than a connection. He never wanted to explore, never touched me like he used to. And when I asked for more, when I begged him to see me, he'd wave me off. I'm not a young man anymore, Denise. I'm not trying to break backs in the bedroom. But I didn't want broken backs. I wanted fire. Then came Adrian. He moved in with us the summer he turned 22, Frank's son from a woman he barely spoke to anymore. Adrian had dropped out of college and needed a place to figure things out. Frank offered our guest room. I offered patience. Adrian was polite, quiet at first, but there was something about him, something magnetic. The way he walked, the way his eyes lingered too long when we talked. I told myself I was imagining it, but I wasn't. One night I walked past the guest room on my way to the laundry. His door was cracked. He didn't hear me. And what I saw made me freeze. He was in bed, shirtless, hand buried beneath the sheets. His eyes were shut, mouth parted. He was lost in it and moaning loudly while stroking himself. I should have looked away, but I didn't. I stood there for too long, something dark and dangerous waking up inside me. I went back to my room, locked the door and cried. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was aroused. At 52. And I hadn't felt that in years. 2 days later, I caught him in the kitchen after Frank had left for work. He stood at the counter, shirtless again, sipping orange juice, like he didn't have a care in the world. I asked him casually, "You sleep all right?" He smirked. "Better than ever. Dreams help." There was a pause, the kind that hums with something unspoken. Then he said, "I saw you the other night, by my door." My throat dried. "You were supposed to be asleep." I was, but in ecstasy, until I felt you watching me. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. He stepped closer, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "Do you want me, Denise?" I should have run, but instead I whispered, "Yes." It started right there in the kitchen. My hands found his chest before I could stop them. His mouth found mine, like he'd been waiting years to kiss me. Every kiss, every breath, was filled with something raw. He didn't treat me like I was too old or past my prime. He devoured me. We didn't even make it to the bedroom that first time. The tiles were cold beneath my back, but his touch lit a fire under my skin. I came hard, loud, shaking, breathless. Once, then again, and again. When it was over, I lay there stunned, not just because of what we'd done, but because of what I felt. Alive, desired, seen. We promised ourselves it was a mistake, that it wouldn't happen again. But you know what they say about forbidden fruit. It doesn't just tempt you, it ruins you. They say if you play with fire long enough, you either get burned or addicted. I got addicted. That morning in the kitchen should have broken me. I should have buried the guilt deep, shut my legs, and begged for forgiveness in a church pew. But instead, I started craving Adrian like a drug. Every whisper of his voice made my stomach twist. Every glance he threw from across the dinner table was an invitation. And every time Frank kissed me goodnight, I saw Adrian's lips instead. It was disgusting, it was dangerous, but it was also alive. Then, it happened again 3 days later. Frank had taken the truck into town for errands. Adrian and I were left alone in the house. Again. I tried avoiding him, stayed upstairs cleaning the bathroom, something I hadn't voluntarily done in months. I didn't hear him come in until I turned around and saw him leaning against the doorframe. No shirt. No shame. "You miss it?" he asked. I didn't answer. But my silence was enough. He stepped into the room, closed the door behind him, and locked it. There was no warm-up this time. No questions, just urgency. I was up against the tiled wall, pants tugged halfway down, his mouth on me like he'd memorized every inch. My body trembled as I hit that first climax, then a second, and before I could catch my breath, he was inside me. Deep, strong, focused. It felt sinful. But it also felt like justice. For every year Frank had left me untouched and starving. By the time we collapsed, I'd come 4 times. I don't remember washing the bathroom after that. We didn't try to stop it after that. We just got better at hiding it. We did it in the car one night, while Frank was inside Walmart, buying fishing supplies. The windows fogged up so bad, I was sure we'd be caught. But somehow we weren't. We did it in the woods behind our house one afternoon when Frank was out grilling with the neighbors. I still had grass on my knees and twigs in my hair when I came back inside. We even did it in Frank's own workshop. Tools hanging around us like silent witnesses. The thrill wasn't just in the sex, it was in the secrecy. The twisted satisfaction of getting away with it. Of being desired so recklessly by someone who shouldn't have even looked at me like that. I was in the laundry room folding Frank's shirts when I heard the footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting Adrian. But it was Frank. He looked different. Pale, sweating, eyes wild with something I didn't recognize. "You think I'm blind?" he asked quietly. I froze. "What are you talking about?" He stepped closer, pulled a phone from his pocket, and showed me a video. Security footage. From the garage. A night Adrian had bent me over the workbench, my face buried in my arm, my body shaking. Frank had seen everything, and suddenly, he wasn't breathing right. His hand clutched his chest, his knees buckled. He hit the ground, hard, gasping. "Frank!" I screamed, dropping to my knees. "Adrian, call 911!" Adrian came rushing in, eyes wide as he saw his father convulsing on the floor. We did everything we could, chest compressions, mouth to mouth. I was shaking so bad, I thought my own heart would give out, but it was too late. Frank was gone. The days after were a blur. Funeral arrangements, cops asking questions, Adrian pretending to be the grieving son, me pretending to be the devastated widow. But behind closed doors, we both knew the truth. "I should leave," Adrian said one night. "This is my fault." "No," I said. "It's ours, and no one can ever know." We made a pact in that moment, a secret sealed with guilt and pleasure. We stopped talking about Frank. We stopped talking about right and wrong. But we didn't stop touching each other. They say time heals all wounds, but they don't tell you what to do when the wound is still in your bed, whispering your name every night, making you forget it even existed in the first place. After Frank died, the house changed. It was quieter, colder. The echo of him lingered in every room, from the recliner he used to sit in, to the Bible he left on his nightstand, dog-eared and fading. But the biggest ghost of all was the guilt, and the temptation that never left. Everyone in the neighborhood called me the strong widow. She's handling it with such grace. She must have really loved him. She's a saint, taking care of his son even after all that. If only they knew. Adrian stayed in the guest room. just until he figured things out. I let them believe he was grieving. They didn't see the way he brushed his hand against mine in the kitchen, or how he'd sneak into my room at night when the lights were off and the world was asleep. The first time it happened after Frank's death, I told myself it was a mistake, but I didn't stop him, and that's how our secret continued, beneath the weight of a dead man's name. One morning, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror, and I swear I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked older, not in years, but in sins. Her eyes held stories she would never speak aloud, and her lips, swollen, bitten, marked by nights that never should have happened. I stared at her, toothbrush in hand, and whispered, "What have you become?" The woman in the mirror didn't answer. She just smiled. It was a Sunday, sunny, slow, and quiet. Adrian had gone out for a drive. I was sitting in Frank's recliner with a glass of wine, flipping through an old photo album like a masochist. There he was, Frank smiling wide at our wedding. Me, pretending I didn't already know he wouldn't satisfy me past year 2. And there was Adrian, just a boy in the background, barely 12. I closed the album with a snap, stomach churning. That's when I heard the door open. Not the front one, the garage. My heart froze. No one was supposed to be in there. Frank's tools hadn't been touched in weeks. I walked toward it slowly, barefoot on cold tile. When I peeked through the crack, what I saw stopped my breath. A detective, snooping, photographing, touching things. Turns out Frank had updated his will just 2 months before he died. He left everything to me, and nothing to Adrian. Not even $1. They found the footage too. The same video Frank had seen the night his heart failed, but it was erased, wiped clean off the cloud the day after he died. The detective asked a lot of questions. I gave him all the right answers. Yes, he had heart problems. No, we didn't argue that day. He'd been stressed lately. Adrian? Oh, he was heartbroken. We danced around the truth like professionals, and somehow it worked. They ruled it natural causes. I thought the storm was over, that we'd survived it, until I found Adrian packing one night. He stood in the doorway with a suitcase and guilt in his eyes. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "This life, this house, this lie." I reached for him. "You're all I have left." He kissed me, slow and sad, the kind of kiss people only give when they've already made up their mind. And just like that, he was gone. No note, no forwarding address, just silence. I stayed in that house, alone. Years passed. People forgot. But I didn't. I could still feel him some nights, in my sheets, in my dreams, in the way my body remembered the way only he had touched me. I never told a soul. Not until now. To Elsie Community. Thank you for holding space for stories like this. For being the kind of audience that can handle the raw, the dark, and the twisted. Some secrets deserve to be buried, but others are meant to be shared, even if it's just once, before they die with you.